Even for a controversial book, this one dives straight into the deep end with its description of 19th century New Orleans. I'm reading The Domestic Manners of the Americans by Frances Trollope and giving you the highlights. This is day one, let's get into it. Okay, so the very first place that Frances steps off the boat after traveling all the way from England in 1827 is New Orleans. Now at this point, the city has only been a part of the United States for around 25 years, and Frances said it resembles a small French village. She doesn't spend too long in the city, so we only get a brief overview, but she does comment on the complex social structure that existed in the city at that time. She kind of makes it seem as if there's a Family Guy-esque hierarchy going on. Pretty unsurprisingly, at the bottom of the totem pole are the slaves. Frances doesn't really say too much about them, other than that she's surprised at seeing them for the first time in her life, and that they are doing all the manual labor in the city. The two main groups she does comment on are the Creoles and the Quadroons. Now, I've read modern accounts of the Creoles where it says that there was not an explicit racial component to the definition of who was and wasn't a Creole, but Frances makes it sound as if the Creoles were mostly white or passing as white. These people are kind of the aristocracy of the city. Frances describes them as planters and merchants. They all hang out together, they go to balls together, and they look down on the Quadroons. The traditional definition of a Quadroon is someone who is of 1/4 African heritage and 3/4 European. But Frances simply says that the Quadroons were the wealthy offspring of Creole fathers and presumably women of color. She says that the Creole prejudice against the Quadroons was the most violent she ever saw in her whole life, which is pretty troubling. Marriage between these two groups was illegal, but nevertheless, Frances says that Quadroon women frequently got into relationships with Creole men. In fact, she seems very smitten by the Quadroons. She calls them elegant and graceful and says that some of them are among the most educated and stylish in the whole city, despite the prejudice against them. But she doesn't really dwell on any of this, and she quickly takes another boat up the Mississippi on her way to Cincinnati. Before she gets there, she stops by a failed utopia where a British woman had tried to prove that blacks and whites were equal by educating the slaves, only to fail miserably. But I'll get into all of that next time.